Hello and welcome. My name is Milton and this is another video for quick tips in your English classroom. This is a series of videos we've been preparing in the lead up to B-Belt. So a bit more information about that later. First, you probably remember me from previous videos. My name is Milton, as I said. I'm an English teacher at British Council Mexico. And today we're going to be looking at how to train your learners to become more autonomous. So if we could put up the presentation, please. Okay, so this is the topic of today. I'm going to begin by talking a little bit about the objectives of today's video. If we go to the next slide, please. So today, we're going to begin the session by talking a little bit about what learner autonomy is. Do we have the same opinions? Do we know what it is? Do we all agree? What it looks like, basically. We're going to look at how to create learner objectives. And we're going to review some tips to promote autonomy in our learners. And finally, we're going to finish with a bit of a surprise. For those teachers living in Mexico, it's a very good surprise. So if you stay to the end, you'll find out what it is. Remember, this is an interactive webinar. So if you have any comments, if there's something you'd like to share, if there's something you'd like to contribute, please write it in the chat and I will try to address it during this webinar, okay? So please participate, please interact. I think it's great that we all share our experiences, okay? So let's begin. Next slide, please. So what is an autonomous learner? What does it mean? What does an autonomous learner look like? So for me, an autonomous learner is a learner who is confident and motivated to improve. What do I mean by this? It's a learner who actually wants to learn English, okay? A learner who actually wants to be there. A learner who believes in him or herself and their ability to improve and progress. So this is one of the first things that we need to encourage in our learners, a reason to be there, motivation to be there. An autonomous learner is a learner who has control over their learning. What does this mean? A learner who makes decisions about what to review, what to study, what to focus on, what to prioritize, how to study, how to focus on something. So an autonomous learner is someone who's able to not only makes those decisions, but is able to make those decisions in a principled way. Because it's not as easy as it sounds. I'm sure many of us have been in a situation where we have an objective, but we don't know how to get there. So our responsibility as teachers is to provide some guidance and support them take control over their learning. And finally, an autonomous learner is a learner who can evaluate their own progress, who is able to self-assess effectively. This is a difficult thing to do, but there are strategies that we can encourage in our learners so that they become more effective in the way that they do this, okay? So we're going to look at some tips a bit later about how to promote this in our learners. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about why it's important to promote autonomy. Next slide, please. So why should we develop autonomy? Well, I think for me, the most fundamental reason is, from my perspective as a teacher, is there's just not enough time in class. In most language schools, there's about 90 hours of focused learning a year in a classroom. In secondary and primary schools, that may be different. It really depends on the situation. But investigations and research demonstrates that on average, a learner needs about 250 hours to go up a level in the CFR scale. So for example, to go from A1 to A2 or to go from A2 to B1, on average, people need about 250 hours of active study. Okay, this is not passive study. So, watching Netflix doesn't really count, unfortunately. So there's not enough time in the classroom. So students need to be able to know how to practice and review in an active way, which is beneficial and supports their progress. When learners develop autonomy, when they develop some independence in their own learning, when they're able to make choices about what they want to study and how they want to study, it makes the whole process more engaging, more interesting. They can make it more relevant to their personal situation. They can make it more interesting for themselves. So this is a very, very valid way of making our classes more engaging, not only for young learners, but for adults too, of course. And it will help them in the future. The more autonomous a learner is, the more independent a learner is, the more that they can continue improving on their English, and not only in English, because these are skills that are transferable later on in life. So these are so vital when we're teaching young learners, good study skills, good review skills, ways to evaluate yourself. These are skills that they will maintain for the rest of their lives, and they'll be able to apply to other situations where they want to learn something. Okay. So hopefully that justifies the need to develop autonomy. Let's go into some tips about how to promote this in our learners. I'm going to talk a little bit about writing, speaking, reading, and listening, the 4 skills. Next slide, please. Oh, no, sorry. Before I go into the skills, I'm going to talk a bit about objectives. I forgot about this bit. So something which is very important when we're developing learner autonomy is helping learners see what their learning looks like, or what it should look like, or help them form an idea of what they want their learning to look like. So the first thing we need to support our learners to do is to clarify what their aim is. So this is sometimes more difficult than it appears. Often adults have clearer aims, not always, of course, but often they do. Often an adult will have an objective, like I want to be able to perform better in meetings at my work, or I want to be able to take the IELTS to be able to study abroad, or I want to be able to socialize better with my English friends, for example. With young learners, it's not always this clear, so we need to help them. One question I like to ask my learners is, how do you see yourself in English? I try to ask them, picture a person who speaks English. Think about a person who you admire, who you like, who speaks English, and have this person as your model of English. Your objective is to speak like this person. Okay, so that might help motivate them. That might help give them an objective. Or you can also, if they're a bit more, if they want to be a bit more practical about it, then you can justify it by, future study opportunities and things like that. So we need to help them clarify what it actually is. And we need to, one thing that's very important when setting learning objectives is actually writing them. There are many problems that we can encounter when writing objectives. One strategy I like to use is using the SMART strategy. The SMART learning aims. So SMART stands for specific, manageable, attainable, or achievable. I can't see my own writing now. It is, I always forget the abbreviation. Relevant, of course, and time-bound or timely. Okay. So by using this abbreviation, this helps us make the objective more achievable, more easier to see come into fruition. And learners need to be clear about what the steps are. So how do I get to this objective? What do I need to do? What do I need to do today? What do I need to do tomorrow? What do I need to do this week? What do I need to do this month? What do I need to do this year? What are the steps? I saw a comment come up, so I'm going to address that. Pablo says, how to put into practice with large groups, for example, with groups of 50, because that is the reality of public schools in Mexico. I think, Pablo, are you talking about setting learning aims? if you're talking about setting learning aims, I mean, we need to, the reality is we need to place some responsibility on our learners, okay? And I understand that you have groups of 50 students, and it's very, very difficult to promote that with such a big group. I think one thing that's very relevant is promoting, is justifying it to the students. Okay, a lot of young learners are more mature than we realise, and if we highlight the positives and the benefits of becoming more autonomous, perhaps they will take to that. Another thing is we can do some training about how to set learning aims. In the long term, this will actually save time. This will help you measure the progress of learners. Actually, if you have some learning aims developed by themselves, so while it might take a bit of time at the beginning, of course, a bit of extra time at the beginning, later on, you have an easier way of referencing their progress and looking at their progress and having conversations with their students about what they've been doing to reach their objectives. So it does take extra time at the beginning, but it helps you later on. It saves time later on. But yes, I think that's a good question, Pablo. It is difficult. It's having a class of 50 students. It is difficult to do these things. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question, Pablo. Please continue to ask questions. I very much appreciate them, and I enjoy reading your opinions. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Learning plans. Okay. So this is something perhaps you can encourage, Pablo. You can encourage your learners to write learning plans. And this is something which is quite personal. Okay. You don't have to control it as the teacher. This needs to be something that learners create themselves because they want to learn. Okay, so what are you going to do? So for example, I'm going to learn 20 items of vocabulary. How often? Every week. For how long? This whole year. And how is that going to help you? Well, the more vocabulary I know, the better able I will be to discuss certain things. So by asking learners to create their own plans like that, you can help them kind of visualize their progress and see give them steps to get to their objective, basically. So yeah, it takes a bit of training and it takes a bit of patience because it is difficult for you to create your own learning plan. It's not an easy. It's quite abstract. But what you can do as a teacher is you can provide some models. You can provide examples of different profiles of students. So a very analytical student might want to focus on vocabulary or grammar. A very talkative and a student who likes to converse a lot might want to focus on strategies to reduce their errors or something like that. A shy student might want to focus on strategies to speak or strategies to get your point across or things like that. By providing some models, they can mimic some of the ideas and personalize some of the strategies. So yeah, it takes time, but and learners aren't able to do it straight away. They need a bit of support and they need some guidance. But it's something that definitely can be done. Okay, now let's move on to some tips for the 4 different skills. Can we go to the next slide, please? If we go one more, sorry. Yes, okay. So tips to promote autonomy. Let's look at writing, okay? So the first thing I want to talk about is show learners how to use model text, okay? This is something I still do to this day in English. When there's something that I'm not sure how to write, I don't know, a report, a proposal, I will search for example reports, example proposals, example cover letters, or whatever it is. And I will look at the way that a good model of this text is structured, is written, the type of language, the type of, the grammar, punctuation, all of these things, how a good standard of this text is written. and I try to mimic some of it. Of course, not by copying it, but mimicking the good things, okay? So we need to show learners how to use model text. How do we do that? We need to train them how to identify the strengths. So, by providing them areas of strengths, things like coherence, cohesion, things like what's the purpose? Does this text meet the purpose? Looking at things like the language, looking at formality, looking at the subtleness of the text as well. So teaching them strategies to look at a model, a good example, and to steal ideas, okay? Not to copy, but to steal ideas, to steal the good things about it. Editing checklists, okay? We mentioned how it's very, very important that learners are able to evaluate themselves. And one way to do this with writing, because students may not be able to correct, their hypothetical language if they are A2 learners, because they haven't reached that stage yet. So they may not be able to do that. But what they can do is refer to a checklist that perhaps you've created with the class, or even they've created themselves if they're trained enough, about whether their text meets certain criteria. So if we're looking at an A2 student, what some criteria that may go on there would be something like, I have clear paragraphs. My sentences aren't too long. I use present simple well, things like this. So having checklists where they can focus their self-evaluation to make that exercise a little bit less scary and a little bit more principled. And finally, writeandimprove.com. I like to share this idea. Writeandimprove.com is a Cambridge tool where they have different Cambridge exam tasks, and students write the task and they get automated feedback. Automated feedback is still in its early stages and it's not perfect. Most of the feedback is focusing on grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and coherence rather than content, because they still can't quite get that perfect, but it's pretty good. So encouraging students to use that will help them their writing. Okay, Theodoro, let's address your comment. I plan for a week because we provide 2 classes a week usually. That's what I need, at least 2 classes to cover a topic properly. Yes, I agree. Yeah, if you're looking at, well, it depends how long the classes are. Now, if they're an hour long, there's not actually that much you can cover in an hour. If you're looking at a vocabulary lesson, I would say maybe 8 items of vocabulary in an hour, really. Or if you're looking at an area of grammar, you almost definitely will need a subsequent class to consolidate what was learned. So I agree with you, Theodore. That's a good point. And planning ahead is a good idea as a teacher. That's good. Next slide, please. So promoting autonomy in listening. So raising awareness of listening sub-skills. So many people think, well, listening is, do I understand it or not? Okay. Well, that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate way of deciding whether your listening is up to speed or not. But there are different there are different things that we can do to improve our listening. You know? We can use strategies. So, for example, predicting. Okay, predicting is a listening sub-skill. The better we are at predicting what we're going to hear, the easier it's going to be to listen, to understand, okay? We can also promote things like understanding, recognizing features of pronunciation. Pronunciation is so many teachers focus on pronunciation as a speaking thing, but the really, really useful thing for learners is teaching pronunciation as a strategy to understand, to listen. Because pronunciation in English is difficult. We have linking, we have assimilation, we have omission, we have different accents. So we need to, what we should be doing as teachers is raising awareness of these different features of pronunciation and giving learners homework to practice identifying it or practice reviewing it. So raising awareness of these sub-skills is often in itself a great way of supporting learners with their listening. Watching series and movies. So I think watching series and movies and listening to podcasts, all these things are great. They're great because they're interesting. We want to listen to them. We want to find out. But I've said avoid subtitles, and I'm also responding to Josefina, CC closed caption. I think this is the same thing, right? Subtitles. If you want to practice listening, yes, avoid it. No closed captions, no subtitles. There is research into this. The research shows that if we use the subtitles, on average, a listener only listens to about 10%. 90% is reading. So if you want to practice reading, subtitles is a good idea. Subtitles in English, of course. But if you want to practice listening, no subtitles. That might be very scary for people. So, oh God, I'm not going to understand anything. What can we do? Well, some tips. Short clips, okay? Something which is not very long. So something from YouTube, which will help, okay? Another idea is listening to something, watching something that you've already seen. So a film that you've already seen with subtitles, or a film you've already seen in Spanish, and then watch it in English. Right? So this way, we're not missing anything of the story. We know what happens. We're just watching it again in English. Okay. And finally, I'd like to talk about EdTED. I think this is a fantastic website. If you don't know about TED Talks, they're great. Okay, they're experts speaking about different subjects. And EdTED is a version which has been adapted of these presentations for education. So there are lots, the videos are shorter, there are some comprehension activities, and there's an opportunity for people who are registered on the website to interact with each other. So I think I very highly recommend this. Teodoro says, I used CC when I was learning English on TV and it worked for me, but it doesn't work for everyone. Yeah, I'm not saying CC is bad, believe me. Okay, CC is very, very good for vocabulary because reading is excellent for vocabulary. Reading is excellent for writing. Reading is fantastic. But to help us distinguish the features of pronunciation, to give us the practice of identifying what someone is saying, it doesn't necessarily, well, help everyone. Maybe some people it does help, but that research demonstrates that it's not subtitles that help our listening. It's not using them. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Tips for promoting reading. Okay, promote reading for fun. How do we do this? Set reading homework, reading activities where they don't have to complete comprehension questions. Okay, sometimes by giving too many tasks, too many activities, it takes the fun out of it. No, so lots of true and false questions or fill in the blank questions. They're good, but sometimes it takes the fun out of it. Promote reading for fun by read something, come back, and let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's debate some of the things that come up in the book or in the text. Okay, so that's something that we do in our first language. Oh, I read this book which was really interesting. Oh, I read this article. You share it with your friends or your colleagues. Let's mimic this in the classroom. Train learners to deduce meaning through context. What does that mean? Well, the biggest problem that I find with my learners when it comes to reading, well, what they say is their problem is their lack of vocabulary. This is what learners always say. And, I understand it. Being someone who has learned a second language, me learning Spanish, I know what that feels like. What we need to do is to train them when we need a dictionary, and when we can just guess the meaning through the context and be satisfied with that. Right? This is something that we do in our own language. I don't know every word in English, and often when I'm reading a text and there is a word that I don't understand, I don't bother checking in the dictionary. I just guess what I think it is. And why do I do that? Because the process of picking up a dictionary and checking, for me, is a bit, it makes the reading less fun. It's a bit of a boring activity for me. I just want to read and enjoy the process of reading, the activity of reading. So if we can encourage learners to pick up those skills that we use, that's going to help them become more autonomous. And a final little tip that I really like, one of the things that people who are learning a second language find very difficult is reading for gist. What do I mean by that? Just reading very quickly to get the general idea, not specific details, but the general idea of the text, the general meaning. An activity which I like to use with my learners to improve reading for gist is using a cue prompter. So what you do is you copy and paste the text into this cue prompter, and you get them to read it, and you increase the speed so that the text is going down like a newsreader would have in a newsroom. And you can increase the speed, you can reduce the speed, so you can practice reading really, really quickly, and you can practice reading at a more reasonable pace. By using that, it forces them to read quickly, and it makes it quite fun. Students find that fun. And you can test them on their overall understanding, the gist of it. Okay, and finally, I like to talk about promoting speaking. Next slide, please. Promoting autonomy in speaking. So one of the problems that a lot of my learners face, I live here in Mexico City, and a lot of my learners simply don't have the opportunity to practice speaking because they live in a Spanish-speaking environment, and it's difficult. Not everybody is confident. Not everybody is able to meet someone online to practice speaking, or to go to a place where foreigners hang out and meet someone. It's quite a difficult thing to do sometimes. So we need to encourage ways of practicing speaking independently. Okay, an audio learning journal. So I'm sure a lot of teachers promote learning journals. What did I learn this week? How do I know that I learned it? What do I need to improve on? What was a success? These sorts of questions that we ask our learners to reflect on. Make that audio. Make that a series of recordings where the learner is talking about what they're doing in class and how they're progressing and how they feel about their learning experience. By the end of the term, you'll have, I don't know, maybe let's say 12 recordings of their progress, and they'll be able to listen to each one. If a student does 12 of these, the student almost definitely will see progress from the first to the final one. And the simple fact of seeing progress will be very motivating. It will help them encouraged to keep doing something like this. Creating fun presentation activities. So, most of us at work have to do some form of presentation often. No matter the industry, a lot of us have to do something like this. I'm not saying you need to encourage young learners to do boring presentations all the time. Try to do some fun presentation activities. One way of creating a fun presentation activity is using green screen apps. So this is one that I like to use. It's called Do Ink. And all you need to do is you need to buy a green cloth, stick it in your background, and you can change the background of what you're recording. And you could do some fun activities with this. So you can, for example, in the picture, there's a girl on a planet. She can be interviewing an alien. Or I've done one where I've had the green screen in the back and I have Acapulco in the back, and I pretend I'm being interviewed because I'm on, about being a foreigner on holiday or something like that, and I'm all red and sunburned. So you can make the presentation or the interviews fun by changing the scenery. And finally, speech to text tools. I'm a big believer in transcription as a way of improving speaking. What is transcription? Transcription is when you write something that has been said. Okay. In the past, we used to have to listen and then write and type. But now, on Word, on WhatsApp, on most writing applications, we have a button which says dictate. And if you press that button, you can say something and the application will write it for you. For example, in Word, you press the button which says dictate and it will write what you're saying if your microphone's working. Why is this a good way of promoting autonomy? Well, for one thing, if the application cannot identify a word because your pronunciation isn't correct, it's going to write the wrong word. So this will show the learner which words they're pronouncing clearly and which words they're not pronouncing clearly. Also, it's easier to evaluate errors in your speaking if you can see it written down. If you speak for 2 minutes and you have the whole text, you can look at your text and, oh, I'm not using the S on third person in present simple. This is a mistake of mine. I need to improve this when I speak. So this is a good way to improve self-reflection and to help learners identify the current state of their speaking skills. Okay, so I think that's enough of me talking. I hope you found some of these ideas useful. I'd like to just spend a couple of minutes on the next slide, please. Do you have any questions or comments, or do you want to share something with us? Because we've spoken about a lot of ideas. So anything about setting learning aims, using learner journals, learning plans, tips to promote autonomy in speaking, tips to promote autonomy in listening and writing and reading. Any questions or anything you want to contribute? Teodoro, you're welcome. I hope you found it useful. Thanks for participating. Thank you. So if you have any ideas or any questions. It's nice to, sometimes it's worth thinking, what am I currently doing in my classroom, to promote learner autonomy? Eduardo, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm glad you found it useful. Thank you, Eduardo. Well, Josefina, where are you from? I'm from England, Josefina. Thank you for asking. I'm from London. Nice to meet you, Josefina. I'm at Coyuca de Benitez, 1 hour away from Acapulco, so I have the beach. Teodoro, I'm so jealous of you. I wish I was there. I love Mexico City, but right now I want to be at the beach. I can't wait. It has to happen soon. I haven't been to the beach for a year, so I'm very jealous. And I think I've been to Coyuca. I think I've been around there. It's north of Acapulco, isn't it? It's very beautiful around there. So you're lucky. Nice to meet you, Josefina. Thank you for joining. Thank you for interacting. Okay, guys, if you have a question, write it and we'll try to respond to it later. Okay. Now we're coming to this. Sorry, I'm just reading some of the comments. Now we're coming to the surprise. Okay. If you've been watching these sessions before, maybe you know the surprise. Don't spoil it for everyone. The surprise has got something to do with B-Belt. B-Belt is, if we go to the next slide, please. B-Belt is an English language teaching conference run by the British Council. It's on February the 18th and the 19th, and it will be online as it was last year. B-Belt means best and brightest of English language teaching. It's the most prestigious English language teaching conference in Mexico. We have speakers from all around the world coming, presentations from all around the world, all different types of contexts, people in secondary schools, people in English language teaching institutions, people at university. We have doctorates, and we have all sorts of specialist speakers in different scenarios. And so it's going to be a very, very interesting year. And the great thing about B-Belt online is that you can watch all the talks. So it's a very, very special year this year. Now the surprise is, next slide, please. Thank you for staying and watching us. Thank you for watching Quick Tips. We very much appreciate it. And as you have watched it for us, we have a small present for you. We have a small gift. when you buy a BBelt 2022 ticket, you will receive a second ticket completely free. You can invite whoever you like, or you can share the cost. Sorry, it says there será un lindo regalo de Navidad, but sorry, I forgot to change that. It's a bit old now, but it can be. It's not a Christmas gift, but it's a 2022 gift, a gift for learning in this year. So the way that you validate this promotion is you go to the BBelt website, you register yourself as a participant, as a participant in the conference. You register individually using the code QuickTips 310122, and as soon as you pay, you will receive an email with a second code and a discount to register your friend, family member, whoever it is, completely free. Okay. Oh, Teodoro says, oh, wow, so I tell my sister. Yeah, of course, why not? That'd be great. So, Teodoro, as soon as, if you register yourself at BBelt and you use the discount code QuickTip310122, as soon as you register with that discount code, there is an option on the page where you can enter that code. You will receive you will receive an email with the information about how to register your sister, if you want it to be your sister, free, completely free. So as soon as you enter that code, you receive an email with that information. Okay. Okay. So how much does it cost? Well, we have information about prices on the website. So if you want to see how much it costs, it's on there. But remember, with this promotion, you can get a half price ticket and share the cost with a friend or a colleague. No? Okay, so the information is on the BBelt website, lady. Okay. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you learned some useful tips for promoting learner autonomy. Just a final comment from Adri. BBelt will be a space for reflection on how the role of the learner has changed and how teachers can empower students through English and all skills required for an ever-changing new global context. I mean, looking forwards to the future. I mean, as everybody knows, the world is changing every day, isn't it? You know, I mean, with COVID, with politics, with everything which is happening, it's crazy. So it's up to us as teachers to learn how to adapt and to continue learning as teachers and to empower our learners. Okay, so and finally, for more information on prices, you can go on that link. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great week, and if you want to join us next week, I'll be very happy to see you. Okay, thank you very much, and have a very nice evening. Goodbye, everybody.